Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And throughout this week, as we did last week, we'll talk about domestic violence and some of the various components that I hope will help each individual have a clear understanding of how domestic violence operates, what are some of the preventative things that individuals can do, and how are some ways that a person can protect themselves or at least begin to mitigate their exposure to the potential for domestic violence. So today, let's talk about why a person will abuse another person. Uh, People often speak of domestic abuse as a choice, but in reality, abusers make many choices over a long period of time. Choices that stem from the belief that abusive behavior is a legitimate way to create and maintain their rightful position of power and privilege within their family. For instance, that they are entitled to act as they do. So, one of the reasons why abusers abuse is because they feel it's my power, it's my privilege, it's up to me to do this if I choose. Domestic abusers who have non domestic criminal histories also often think using violence is legitimate in other contexts. So, when you deal with domestic abusers, in all likelihood, they probably abuse in other areas also. Uh, at its root, however, domestic abuse is motivated by the desire to gain and keep control. And the individual makes hundreds of small choices about how to continue controlling his or her partner. So, in essence, the action that you see or the verbalization that you hear is really a copulation of a lot of small things that lead to that. And then what you see or what you hear is the manifestation of a lot of other calculated thoughts and behaviors that finally manifest themselves in the outburst or the controlling event. One reason that we have to understand this is more men than women abuse their partners. And it may be that men more often have power over a partner that they see as worth defending. But the feelings of entitlement is also influenced by other attitudes, other values, perceptions, and feelings, and by what the individual learned while growing up. Well, that's really kind of the root of the problem. Most abusers have been exposed to abuse. Let me say that again. The majority of abusers have been exposed to abuse. So, one reason more men than women abuse their partners may be that men more often have been exposed to witnessing an adult in their life abuse another adult. Now, this is the catchy part. Men can watch women abusing other men. It's not unheard of for men to grow up in a home where they had a bully for a mother. It's not unheard of for a male to grow up in a family system that was female dominated, and that male basically felt as if he was a zero in that female organization. And that male could grow up in that female populated environment, bitter, angry, resentful, almost with a misogynistic mindset toward females. And as that male moves into his own young adult married relationships with females, rather than that male becoming a surrendering spirit, that same male will become a rebellious spirit, always having to prove and always having to see himself as a person that I'm going to take back the power. Well, take back the power from where? I'm going to take back the power that was stolen from me, that was taken from me in that home I grew up in. And that male can grow up abusing women because that male is bitter against women. Abusers some mostly have a distorted mentality. And these are the three things that I want us to kind of end our family basics presentation today with. Something is wrong with the thinking of abusers. That's true whether it's male or female. Their thinking has been distorted. Abusers victimize others to reassure themselves of their faulty view of their own self-worth at the expense of somebody else. The abuser will abuse in order to reassure them, I'm in control. I have the power. That's distorted thinking. Secondly, abusers victimize others due to a seared feeling for others. Their conscience has been seared. It's almost like, I don't have any feelings for you. Your tears mean nothing. As a matter of fact, the tears, and we'll talk about this in point number 3, the tears and the anger and the hurt in a distorted manner energizes the abuser. Because the person who is being abused is crying out for relief. Do you see the agony I'm in? Do you see the hurt? Look at your children. But in the distorted thinking of an abuser, instead of that causing them to feel less empowered, it's almost like pouring gasoline on the fire. That's how distorted the thinking is. Abusers victimize others in attempts to make others feel what they feel. See, abuse starts very early in life. And the abuser that is now an adult in many cases, a young man or a young lady, teenage years, young adult years, their mind has been seared shut into those developmental times when they were in pain, when they were crying out for help, when they were saying, somebody rescue me, somebody have mercy on me. But their mind now is saying, but nobody responded. Nobody cared. Nobody rescued me. Nobody even thought to feel what I was feeling. So now I don't feel for other people, but I'm going to make the world feel what I felt then. As a child, I felt terrible. I felt afraid. I felt uncertain about my own safety. I felt that my life was completely at the mercy of somebody else. I didn't know if I was going to live or die from day to day. And now that abuser who victimized others in a very distorted way has now said, I'm going to make others feel what I felt. That's not good thinking at all. When we understand the mentality, how the mind has been bent, how the conscience has been seared, how emotions have been disrupted, then you'll understand why crying out and pleading does very little good when a person is set on hurting someone else. I want you to join me on tomorrow because as I continue with this, I'll share with you why we have in our streets, in our communities, and in our homes, in almost every state in the United States, an escalation of crime. And have you noticed the age population? These are people 21 to about 40 years old, 21 to 35 years old. But abuse is on the increase. No sensitivity, no consideration for the hurt, and no one seems to be able to stop the abuse because in the mind of the abuser, it's seared and it becomes unquenchable. That there's a rage inside. And the victims many times are not aware of the intensity of that rage. So the least little thing, just like in domestic abuse, it's now overflowing into society, into the workplace, into the school place. But I want you to join me again tomorrow, and we will talk about in more detail how long-term the damage will be as domestic violence keeps escalating. And unless something is done at every level, from social to political to religious to family, it's going to get worse. I'll see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late and don't skip class.